Do y'all remember group projects in school? The teenagers are leaving right now. They remember. They're doing them, right? And the thing about group projects is that they're never really group projects. Right? The teacher assigns them as group projects, but it's really like one kid drags 3 duds along with him. Right? One person's doing the work, I said him, more likely she, right, is dragging the rest of the group. They're getting the A for everybody. Right, they're getting all, they're doing all the work. Maybe you got one other person who volunteers to color the poster. Right? That's their contribution. Right? But really it's usually one person kind of doing all of the work. Everybody else is just coming along. So either you go, yeah, I remember doing that. I remember being the one that did all the work and everybody else just sat there. Or you're one of the duds. If you look back and you think, no, I thought group projects were pretty great. You were a dud. I was being dragged along by everybody else, okay? So, the reason I bring that up is because when we look at our passage today, Luke is going to really emphasize, and if you pay attention the way that he writes, he's very clear that the crucifixion of Jesus was truly a group project. Everybody gets along. We can't pin it on any one person. Or we can't pin it on Pilate, we can't pin it on Herod, we can't pin it on the Sanhedrin, we can't pin it on the high priest, we can't pin it on any one person. Truly, everybody participates in this project. So, we'll dive in today. We'll be in Luke chapter 23, verses 1 through 25. We'll start with verses 1 through 5. It says this, "Then the whole company of them arose and brought him before Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, 'We found this man misleading our nation and forbidding to give us tribute to Caesar, and saying that he himself is Christ, a king.' And Pilate asked him, 'Are you king of the Jews?' And he answered him, 'You have said so.' Then Pilate said to the chief priests and the crowds, 'I find no guilt in this man.' But they were urgent, saying, 'He stirs up the people, teaching throughout all Judea from Galilee even to this place.'" Okay, so he gets dragged before Pilate. Let's talk about Pilate a little bit here. Pontius Pilate, he's a big deal, right? Pontius Pilate is really the only just human being, right? Jesus is fully human, but fully divine as well, so he's unique. He's the only just ordinary human being named in our creeds. Right? If you look at something like the Nicene Creed, the Apostles' Creed, they name Pontius Pilate. They say Jesus crucified under Pontius Pilate. He's a big deal. He's an important guy. Why is he named in the creeds? He's named in the creeds as a way of dating them. Right? He's named in there as a way of saying, this is not a myth. This is something that really happened. Jesus is actually, factually crucified under Pontius Pilate. He lived in that time, and there was an actual human person who sentenced him to death. That's why he gets named that way. But think about Pilate a little bit more. Pilate is the governor of the province of Judea. Judea had not always, by the Romans, been a province. In 37 BC, it was conquered by Herod the Great. Herod the Great maintained what was known as a client kingdom under the Roman Empire. He had basically almost all of the Promised Land. Right? He had all that region that he was in charge of, and he was called King Herod, and he was also called King of the Jews by the Roman Empire. But he was under the Roman Empire. His son, Herod Archelaus, a bunch of his sons kind of split up into 4, called the Tetrarchy, that they ruled different areas of it after his death. Herod Archelaus is the one who rules Judea, where Jerusalem is, after King Herod's death. And so he is also known as King of the Jews. But he did a terrible job. He was very oppressive. The Jews sent a delegation to Rome to appeal to Caesar Augustus about how bad he was. And he was so bad that they listened to the people and said, okay, fine, we'll get rid of him. They got rid of him, and they took over Judea and made it a province of Rome, no longer under a client kingdom. Now, that matters because that's talking about how much control Rome has over. I use it in these terms. You think about like a lot of fast food places, a lot of the national chains. They'll have franchises, right? Those are owned by individual people, local people who own and run that McDonald's or whatever it might be, right? But they also have company stores that are most directly just run by headquarters. And there's going to be a manager there, but he has no real authority, has no ownership over it. That's Pilate. And that's what Judea has turned into. Judea is no longer a franchise. It took over by the Roman Empire, more directly ruled by a governor, put in place by them. That's Pontius Pilate. Pilate was the official that the Jews had to go to if they wanted a criminal executed. And we see here that the whole company brings him before Pilate. So they have their trial in the Sanhedrin, which was the design. That's what the Romans wanted them to do. Because the Romans, they didn't want to have to do a lot of the small governing. They didn't want to govern small disputes. They didn't want to oversee, small claims court and minor criminal trials and things like that. They wanted the people to go ahead and do that stuff themselves. What they wanted primarily was taxes, that you pay taxes to Rome, and then they took away capital punishment because they could swing the sword. And so they if you wanted to try anybody on capital punishment charges, you needed to go to the Roman Empire directly and to the governor to make that happen. So they have their trial in the Sanhedrin as they're supposed to. Then they bring him to Pilate, and he's going to hear their accusations. The whole company comes along, not customary. Normally, Sanhedrin would meet. They might assign one of the priests, like, hey, you take this criminal to Pilate, tell him what happened. We'll have a couple guards escort him, and they would, they're done with their business. They don't need to go do any more. Right? They can bring the case, they can bring what happened, bring the charges, all of that. They don't need everybody to go. In this case, the whole company goes. Everybody, all the priests, all of their disciples, all their servants, everybody, a big crowd takes Jesus to Pilate. Not normal, not customary, but everybody wanted in on this. They all wanted to be a part of executing Jesus. They bring their accusations. Accusation number 1, misleading the nation. They accuse Jesus of misleading the nation because they don't believe him. They do not believe him, so they accuse him of misleading the nation. And if Jesus isn't who he says he is, that would be the case. Right? It's not, because they don't believe him, it's not an unreasonable charge to make against Jesus. Right? What is unreasonable to say about Jesus, and this remains true to this day, is that he's just okay. Right? He's a good teacher, kind of neutral on Jesus. Jesus is fine. I don't have a problem with Jesus. He's not good, not bad. He's maybe good, but he's not like, we don't need to worship him, right? That is an unreasonable thing to say about Jesus if you actually read what he says. If you actually take what he says seriously, because he says things like that he is the Messiah, that he's the Son of Man, the Son of God. Like, he says things that are exclusive. So you can't be neutral on Jesus. You can't just be okay with him. He is either lying, misleading the nation, right? He is misleading people, lying intentionally. He is a liar, or he's crazy. He's a lunatic, and he thinks it himself. He believes all this stuff himself, but he's wrong. He's deluding himself as well as everybody else. Or what he says about himself is true, and he is Lord. So your only options when it comes to Jesus are that he's a liar, that he's a lunatic, or that he is Lord. Only thing you can reasonably say about him. That's the only thing only reasonable response you can have. The fact that they bring him on these charges saying he's misleading the nation is not a crazy thing for them to say if they don't believe him. And it's important that we recognize that when we take the gospel to people and when we try to share our faith with people. If they don't believe it, it's going to sound like nonsense. Accusation number 2, forbidding us to give tribute to Caesar. Now this is just an outright lie, right? It's just not true. Jesus never told them not to pay their taxes. In fact, we saw a few weeks ago in Luke chapter 20 that he says, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's and to God the things that are God's. And we got into the complexity of what that saying means, but bottom line, he doesn't tell them not to pay their taxes. He tells them, yeah, go ahead and pay your taxes. Go ahead and pay your taxes. It's important. He never tells them not to. Why do they bring this accusation against him then? One, it strengthens their case. These are the things that Rome cares about. These are the things that the Roman Empire cares about. They want their taxes. That's the number one thing they want. Why do they bother conquering these people? Why do they bother having a standing army in Jerusalem? Why do they care? Because they want the money. They want the taxes and the natural resources that can be found in that location. They want the trade routes cleared and opened and easy to access. That's why they conquer the people. They want things to stay calm, and they want to get their taxes. So that's accusation number 2. And it's an outright lie. Why do they choose this lie? It strengthens their argument. And number 2, it's actually what they think. The priests, out of everybody, were the ones who were most upset about the Roman tax because it made people less likely to pay their temple tax. Because they didn't swing the sword anymore, so it was very hard to enforce. Hey, please pay your temple tax. Right? It remains true to this day, right? If you don't pay your taxes, right? This is an interesting time to bring this up. Right? We're right in tax season. Right? And if you don't pay your taxes, there could be consequences. Right? The IRS could come calling, and there could be serious consequences. You could go to jail for not paying your taxes. If you don't give to this church, I don't even know. Right? I don't even know if you do or not. And so it's frustrating to the priests that they can't control whether people give their temple tax, but Rome can control whether they pay their taxes. And the fact that they have to pay their taxes to Rome makes it less likely for them to give to the temple. And that is how they get their money. That's how the money gets put in their wallets. Right? That's how they are provided for themselves. They actually don't want people paying their taxes. It's kind of an ironic accusation that they make here. Third accusation is that he is claiming to be king. And this is an interesting one because they have to explain their own theology in order to make this accusation. Because they say he is claiming to be the Christ. And the Christ is another word for the Messiah. That's another phrase meaning the Messiah, the chosen one, the anointed one, the promised one. This person who was prophesied throughout the Old Testament saying, there is this one who is coming who is going to change everything. They're saying that's who Jesus is claiming to be. He is claiming to be this one that we are waiting for. We believe in the prophecies that says this person is coming and he's going to rescue us. But specifically, that necessarily means that person is going to be a king. Because part of the prophecy is that person will inherit the throne of King David, and his kingdom will have no end. So when they say he's claiming to be the Christ, and I need to explain, that means he's claiming to be a king. But it's a funny admission as well, because what they're essentially saying is, we're waiting for a king. Make no mistake, we are waiting for this prophesied one. He's going to do a lot of things, including kick you out. We just don't think this is the guy. We just don't think it's Jesus. We would love to see that guy come, but we don't think it's him. That's their third accusation, as Jesus is claiming to be king. Why, in response to that, Pilate asks, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Because he doesn't really care about them misleading the nation. Who cares? As far as Pilate's concerned, lie to him all you want. He doesn't really care what he has to say to the nation of Jews. He did not view himself as an equal to the Jews. None of the Romans would have viewed themselves as equal to the Jews. They're over top of them. They're oppressing them, right? They are inherently better than them as far as they're concerned. Who cares about that? We care about the taxes thing and the treason thing, and that part is the one that's more important. The treason is, okay, if that's true, then that would give the not paying taxes more weight. So, are you the king of the Jews? He's also asking this kind of sarcastically, I believe. Because king of the Jews was a title that people would only associate with Herod the Great. Right? Maybe Herod Archelaus, but he only held it for such a short period of time. Herod the Great was, as far as anyone alive at this time would be concerned, he was the person that you would call King of the Jews. And not King of the Jews as in one of them, but as in over them. But it was the title that he held, and it's the only person that it has ever been referred to in Greek. Because the last king of Israel was Hoshea, and his rule ended in 722 BC when the Assyrians imprisoned him. The last king of Judah, because they had a divided kingdom at the end there, the northern kingdom of Israel, it ended in 722 BC. The kingdom of Judah lasted a little bit longer. That was Zedekiah, who his rule ended in 586. He had actually been specifically appointed by Nebuchadnezzar, so even his appointment was not totally legitimate. It wasn't of their free will. This was the Babylonian Empire saying, hey, kingdom of Judah, you get to have this guy as your king. He even changed his name to prove that point. His name was originally Mattaniah. He changes it. Nebuchadnezzar changes it to Zedekiah, which if someone can change your name, they are certainly controlling you. Right? That's not a good sign for you in terms of your own autonomy. If someone says, hey, I got a new name for you, and you just have to accept it. So Zedekiah is the last king. He doesn't totally accept it because he does rebel, but his rebellion is put down when Nebuchadnezzar kills his sons, gouges his eyes out, and then takes him into captivity. That's how his rule ends. So there has not been, at this point in history, a king in Israel for 600 years. Over 600 years, there has not been a king in Israel of any kind. And even longer than that, any kind of united kingdom. There has not been a king in Israel in over 600 years. So when he asks him, are you the king of the Jews? Nobody is at all, everyone's just thinking of Herod the Great, first of all, which this man is clearly not Herod the Great. But even if they went back and went, oh, maybe he is going to be the next king of Israel, it's 600 years. Right? That'd be like if today someone claimed to be the emperor of the Byzantine Empire. Right? He said, are you the emperor of the Byzantine Empire? What? Because the Byzantine Empire ended in 1453. 600 years. That's actually closer than they were. 600 years. That's how long ago it has been. This is not a going concern as far as anyone is concerned. Jesus responds to this question, you have said so, which we saw last week seems to be an affirmative as far as the Jews are concerned. When he says something very similar to that in response to their questions, they say, we don't need to even ask him anymore. He's admitted it. So it seems to be an affirmative answer. It seems to be saying, it is as you have said, seems to be like the context there. He says, you have said so. That seems to be what everyone accepts as a positive, affirmative answer. But Pilate replies, I find no guilt in this man. So why does he not see Jesus as guilty? If that is an affirmative answer, why does he not see Jesus as guilty? Because he does not look like a threat. Remember, at this point, he has been up since the previous day. Right? This is now Friday morning. Thursday night, he was having the Passover with the disciples. He gets arrested that night after he was stressed out so much that he was sweating blood. He has not cleaned himself up since then. Like he's literally sweating blood, goes to wake up the disciples, tell them to keep praying. Boom, the crowd comes and arrests him. He's not getting fixed up at all from that. He's still got blood sweat stains on his face, all over his body. Then they spend all night interrogating him, beating him, spitting on him. If he fell asleep at all that night, it would have only been for a short period of time. He does not look good. He does not look strong in this moment. So when they say, this man is claiming to be king of the Jews, Pilate's like, what are you talking about? Look at him. He is not a threat. And as far as Pilate's concerned, the guys who actually are in power, who actually could at all pose a threat, they're the ones who turned him in. So Pilate is like, I find no guilt in this man. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? They respond with further accusation. They say, no. Yes, I know what he looks like. I know what he looks like right now, but he's been stirring up the people. Accusation number 4. He's been stirring up the people. He's been getting them riled up. Like, yes, I know he doesn't look like he could do that, but he trust me, he was doing it. He was drawing big crowds. He was doing big numbers. He is causing a problem. The Romans don't want to deal with an uprising. They know that. They know that is the job number 1 of Pilate. When Pilate comes, they know this is the job. Keep the peace. Keep the people calm. Keep them appeased. Keep them doing what they're supposed to do. Just pay taxes, not cause a problem. So if they've been stirring up the people, this could be a problem. If he's been stirring up the people, this presents a threat. They try to sell it that way. They emphasize it even further by saying he's been teaching from Galilee all the way to here. Right? So he's been teaching from Galilee all the way to here. He's been stirring up the people and teaching them. This is a problem. And the fact that they say from Galilee is a crucial detail for Pilate, as we'll see as we continue here, verses 6 through 16. When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean. And when he learned that he belonged to Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him over to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at that time. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had long desired to see him because he had heard about him, and he was hoping to see some kind of sign done by him. So he questioned him at some length, and he made no answer. The chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him. And Herod with his soldiers treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then, arraying him in splendid clothing, they sent him back to Pilate. And Herod and Pilate became friends with each other that very day, for before this they had been at enmity with each other. Pilate then called together the chief priests and the rulers of the people and said to them, "You brought me this man as one who was misleading the people. And after examining him before you, behold, I did not find this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither did Herod, for he sent him back to us. Look, nothing deserving death has been done by him. I will therefore punish and release him." So when Pilate hears that Jesus has been teaching from Galilee to Judea, he asks the question, wait a minute, is this man a Galilean? If he's a Galilean, that's great, right? Because if he's from Galilee, that's not part of the province of Judea. That's north, right? And it also fits what anyone would think, because Galilee was from that and that region was really a crossroads of a lot of the trade routes and stuff like that. It was far enough from the seat of power in Jerusalem that there were a lot of different ideas that circulated there. There were a lot of revolutionary type people that came from there. It was common for there to be kind of wackos in Judea, in Galilee. There was one of the commentators I listened to referred to it as the Berkeley of the day. Okay? And yeah, if you hear about, there was a protest in Berkeley today, you're like, yeah, because it's a day that ends in Y. Right? You're not surprised at all. You're like, yeah, there's all kinds of crazies over there. Right? And that's how they would feel here. They'll go, oh, he's from Galilee. I get it. But also, for Pilate, good news, not my jurisdiction. If he's from Galilee, that's on another of Herod's sons who inherited that region and actually kept it. This is not Herod Archelaus. This is another of Herod's sons. Now he is a client king of the Roman Empire in Galilee. Let's send it to him because he actually was visiting Jerusalem at that time. He's there for the feasts and stuff as well. Let's send Jesus to him. Get him out of our hair. Let's pass the buck. Let's move along. And so Herod, for his part, he's glad to see Jesus. He loves it. He's like, oh, great. I've been wanting to see him. I heard about him. I heard he does some crazy miracles. I heard he does some incredible teaching. People have been quoting him to me. Like, I've been wanting to see this guy. That's awesome. Let's bring him in. Let's see what's going on. Hey, get your cousin who's got that leg thing. Let's see if he can do anything about it. Right? He's excited to see Jesus, but Jesus doesn't put on a show for him. He stays silent, doesn't say anything. Herod asks him all kinds of questions. hey, how'd you get here? What happened? You know, who'd you piss off? Like, what happened? How did we get here? Jesus is all beat up, asks him a lot of probably theological questions. Either Herod had some interest in Judaism. He wanted to know about it, and so he may be asking him some questions about that. Jesus doesn't say anything. Okay, Jesus, let's see. Can you do some of your tricks for us? Can you do some magic? Let's bring it. I got some people that are sick here. Let's see. Can you heal them? Jesus does nothing. Well, Herod came for entertainment. He wanted some entertainment out of this. He's getting nothing, right? Because he's on vacation. He's normally supposed to be up in Galilee. He's down here on vacation for the Passover. He's here with all his people. Everybody's there. They want to see a show. He just doesn't give him a show. He doesn't do what he wants him to do. Jesus remains silent. So Herod makes his own entertainment. They start mocking Jesus. He has his soldiers put on his royal garments on him and send him back to Pilate. He's like, okay, we'll goof around with this guy. But Herod gets annoyed very quickly because Jesus won't perform. And in the meantime, instead, all he has to do is hear all the Jews, all the Sanhedrin guys, continuing to say, here's what he did, Herod, and can you believe it? And as far as Herod's concerned, it's just nagging. Oh, it's the opposite of what I wanted. I wanted to see some miracles. I wanted to hear some cool quotes. Got nothing except these guys hammering me with complaints. All right, let's just look at this guy's a joke. He's nothing at all. Oh, wait, you're thinking of the King of the Jews? Hey, yeah, get my spare robe, my old robe. Let's get their old robe on him. Put that on him. Give him some royal type garments and send him back to Pilate. Pilate, great joke sending me to the King of the Jews. Here, I'll send him back to you dressed as the King of the Jews. Pilate and Herod become friends over this. Because as far as they're concerned, they're trading a joke back and forth. Right? Oh, he sent me this guy. He's all beaten up and bloody and exhausted. Like, he's the King of the Jews. Hilarious. I'll send it back to you here. Here he is wearing royal garments. They were used to be enemies. Now they're friends. As a result of this incident, Jesus brings people together. For better or worse. For better or worse. Pilate is ready to deliver his verdict. It didn't work. He couldn't pass the buck. He's got to deliver his official verdict. He didn't think that Jesus represented a serious threat. And Pilate tries to reason with the Jewish leaders. He says, I didn't find this man guilty. Neither did Herod. We don't think he did anything. We don't know what's going on here. So, listen, he's not guilty. We're not going to put him to death. Why would we put him to death? We can't find any guilt at all. But we'll punish him and send him and release him. We'll release him. Punish him and release him. Even though they found him guilty of nothing. We found him guilty of nothing, totally innocent, but we'll punish him and release him. Why? If he's not guilty, why punish him? They're just trying to appease the people. They're trying to keep the peace. Can we keep these guys happy? Okay, we don't want to execute someone for no reason, so we'll say, let's punish him, we'll release him. They won't have it. They don't like it. He's willing to punish him even though that's the case, because he's just trying to keep the peace. Continue here, verses 18 through 25. But they all cried out together, away with this man and release to us Barabbas, a man who had been thrown into prison for an insurrection started in the city and for murder. Pilate addressed them once more, desiring to release Jesus. But they kept shouting, Crucify, crucify him. A third time he said to them, Why? What evil has he done? I found in him no guilt deserving death. I will therefore punish and release him. But they were urgent, demanding with loud cries that he should be crucified. And their voices prevailed. So Pilate decided that their demand should be granted. He released the man who had been thrown into prison for insurrection and murder, for whom they asked, but delivered Jesus over to their will. I was getting into it. So if you were looking closely, you may have noticed that we ended with verse 16 last time. I picked up verse 18 here, skipped 17 altogether. If you look at your Bibles, you might find it's also missing in your Bibles. Verse 17 might be gone. It might be in there with an asterisk or a little footnote that tells you that verse does not occur in the earliest manuscripts. And this is a common thing that you'll find in your Bibles. This is the result of something that we call textual criticism. It's something that Bible scholars do. We do not have the original autographs of any of the books, like meaning the original document that Luke wrote by hand. We don't have that, but we have a lot of early copies. And they are dated. We can date them and figure out what are the oldest ones and what are the newest ones, what are the earliest manuscripts, what are the latest manuscripts. And then they compare them, and for the most part, they are almost all identical. There are small changes. Sometimes it's something as simple as one will say Jesus Christ and one will say Christ Jesus. And it just got flipped, but doesn't change the meaning at all. Here, this entire verse does not exist in the earliest manuscripts. Later manuscripts, it gets added in. And we can usually then figure out, okay, why did it get added in? And here, we can understand why it got added in, because Luke does not explain this prisoner release program. But other gospel accounts do. And verse 17 is essentially lifted straight from Mark chapter 15, verse 6, and put in as verse 17 of this chapter. And so let's look at that verse, and then we can maybe understand why that is the case. If we look at Mark chapter 15, verse 6, it says, "Now at the feast, he used to release for them one prisoner for whom they asked." Okay, this doesn't change the meaning of the passage at all. It gives us some more context that Luke is just assuming that we know. He's assuming that we know that it was the practice of the Roman government to release a prisoner every year at Passover. And every people that the Roman Empire conquered, they did things like this. It was a way of keeping the peace, a way of appeasing the people. And so they said, oh, you're having a big feast at this time. The Roman Empire does not care about Passover at all, but they understand this is your special time. So as a little treat, we'll release one of the prisoners that we've kept. We'll release it just to help, just to celebrate. We want to help you guys celebrate. We'll release one prisoner that you want. Whoever you want, we'll release somebody, let them free. You think they're innocent, whatever, we'll release them. You tell us who you want, and we'll release them to you. Pilate is proposing, let's let Jesus be this guy that's released. We continue here. In Mark's account, we get some more context for this passage. Let me finish my thing about textual criticism. So this verse, we understand why this got added in. That's almost always the case anytime these kind of little differences pop up. And most of them are minor. This is one of the bigger ones, honestly. This is a pretty big one, a whole verse to be added in like that. The biggest one, if you want to look into it, if you get interested in this concept of textual criticism and looking at later manuscripts and earlier manuscripts, the biggest, most glaring example is the end of Mark. Because Mark ends his gospel in a really disappointing way. He ends with the women coming to the tomb, finding it empty, and running away terrified. The end. Hard cut. It's not a great ending, right? You don't hear about anybody seeing Jesus, just his body is missing. And essentially he's saying, then you go find out what happened. Go find out what happened next. Go ask some questions. Right? He just ends it right there. And so at some point, somebody came along and said, this is a terrible ending to Mark. I'm going to write my own. And they went in and wrote their own ending. And long story short, and you have to look into it, but that is why there are churches where people handle snakes. For real. Because someone added an ending to Mark because they didn't like the ending. Okay. Mark 15, 6 through 11. At the feast, he used to release for them one prisoner for whom they asked. And among the rebels in prison who had committed murder in the insurrection, there was a man called Barabbas. And the crowd came up and began to ask Pilate to do as he usually did for them. And he answered them, do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews? For he perceived that it was out of envy that the chief priests had delivered him up. But the chief priests stirred up the crowd to have him release for them Barabbas instead. So this is their custom, release a prisoner at Passover. Pilate suggests, understandably, how about I just release Jesus? He hasn't done anything wrong anyway. Do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews? In quotation marks, said sarcastically, tongue in cheek, do you want me to release for you the king of the Jews? And he asks the common people, the crowd gathered there for this release, he tells the Sanhedrin that he's going to do this, then he goes and offers it to the people. Do you want me to release Jesus to you? Because he suspects, and it's true, that they did this partly out of jealousy. And that these guys don't like the fact that Jesus is a good teacher and he's drawing these big crowds. That's why they deliver him up. Surely the crowds will want him back. And that would make sense, right? If we're reading this story for the first time, you never heard this before, and you went back to Palm Sunday, the triumphal entry, when Jesus comes into town and the people are singing his praises and waving palm branches. He's riding a donkey into Jerusalem. They're all excited, cheering him on. Then he goes into the temple. He flips some tables and he drives people out. And then he spends all week in there teaching. Big crowds, people asking him all these questions. You have the undercover guys coming in trying to ask him trick questions. He's knocking them down one after the other. Why wouldn't the people want him? They've been after him all week. Big crowds. Why wouldn't they want him back? How does this possibly work? How can the chief priest even get the people to ask for Barabbas instead? Barabbas, who had been a murderer during a previous insurrection. We don't even know when it happened. Could have been years before. That he had tried to stir up an insurrection. He'd been part of it and he'd murdered somebody, probably a Roman soldier. He's being held prisoner. How does he get the people to ask for Barabbas? Well, that Barabbas probably was a folk hero, right? Because they did like these guys who were insurrectionists, the zealots, who would try to overthrow the Roman government and do things to try to undermine them and all that. He was probably a folk hero. But how do you get the crowd to ask for him instead of Barabbas? Well, for the crowd, Jesus, what good can he do at this point? He had seemed unstoppable, right? He had been this one doing miraculous things. He had flipped tables, driven out money changers, all of those things. He had done all these incredible things. They'd seen him heal people, do incredible miracles, all of this. But now, he does not look like that guy anymore. He's beaten down. He's being held as a prisoner of the Roman government. If he can't get out of this, what good is he? What good is he to them if he can't get out of this? He's supposed to rescue them. Why would they rescue him? Right? If he can't get out of this, he doesn't have the power to get out of this, what good is he? And these are the questions that people ask all the time when they come to Jesus to solve their problems, not recognizing who he is. You hear people say, what good is Jesus if he can't solve my financial problems? What good is Jesus if he can't heal my cancer or the cancer of my family member? What good is Jesus if he can't solve the problems that are going on with my kids? What good is he if he can't save my marriage? What good is he if he can't do my will? These are the questions we ask because we don't understand who Jesus is. And this is the problem that the crowd runs into. If he is up there and he is being arrested and charged with these things and he is facing a sentence of death, what good is he to me if he can't rescue himself? It's a failure to recognize who Jesus is because Jesus is not a genie waiting to do your bidding. He is not a super soldier awaiting to obey your command. He is not a vending machine waiting for you to put in the right number of tokens and make your selection. God, what do I want from you today? What can you give me? What can you do for me? That's not how Jesus works. He is actually king. That's the ironic thing about this charge, is that he is actually King of Kings and Lord of Lords. He is the supreme authority. We bend to his will. He does not bend to our will. But so often we come asking, how can I make him do my will? Okay, what do I have to do? What do I have to give? What do I have to do or what do I have to pay in order to get God to do what I want? It's the wrong question. It's the wrong question. It's the failure to recognize who Jesus is. He is actually king. The ironic thing is, he doesn't need to overthrow the Roman Empire. The Roman Empire only ever stood according to his will. As we see in Daniel chapter 2, verse 21, he changes times and seasons, he removes kings and sets up kings. He is the one who controls who is in authority. Paul attests to this in Romans chapter 13, verse 1, where he calls us to be subject to the governing authorities. For there is no authority except from God, and those that exist have been instituted by God. And that's true whether you like the authority or not. All authority is from him anyway. He never needed to overthrow the Roman government. He could have done it any time. It is not that Jesus should bend to our will, it's that we should bend to his. When we understand who he is, we humble ourselves before him. But the crowd would not be reasoned with. They cry out, "Crucify, crucify him." Pilate could find no legal basis for executing Jesus, but the crowd was insistent. It's important for Luke to emphasize this point because Jesus should not be thought of as another victim of Roman oppression. There's a long list of those. That's not what's going on here. It's not that the Roman government killed him. It's that everyone insisted. Pilate is complicit in that he allows it to happen, but so are we. Because crucify him is the heartbeat of sin. All of our sin comes down to rebellion, a rejection of God's rightful rule. It is this way from the beginning. We look at Genesis chapter 3 to see where it all started. The serpent was more crafty than any other beast in the field that Yahweh God had made. He said to the woman, "Did God actually say you shall not eat from any tree in the garden?" The woman said to the serpent, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden. But God said, you shall not eat from the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die." But the serpent said to the woman, "You will not surely die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened. You will be like God, knowing good and evil." You will be like God. You can be the king. You actually know better. You'll know everything that he knows. You'll be able to do what he does. You will be able to make your will done. You don't have to bend to his will anymore. You can do what you want. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was a delight to the eyes, and the tree was to be desired to make one wise, she took fruit and ate it. She also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate. As Adam and Eve reached for that piece of fruit, in their hearts was a silent chant, "Crucify him, crucify him, put to death the God who made me." It is a cry to put to death the God who created us and reigns over us. It is a desire for independence and self-determination. Our own sin screams, "Crucify him." Wrap up with this 3 takeaways for today's message. Number 1, recognize Jesus' absolute innocence. He had done nothing deserving of death, nothing wrong ever. Number 2, put down your own rebellion. Recognize that where you insist on your own will, that is our rebellion. That is the heartbeat of sin. We are saying, put to death the God who made me, the God who reigns over me. I want my way. Instead, we should submit to the King of Kings. I'm going to pray here in just a second, and then we're going to take communion and remember to Jesus' broken body and shed blood for us. After that, there'll be a prayer team available over here if you'd like prayer for anything. They'd love to pray for you. Would you bow with me? Father, we thank you for your word, God, and we do recognize our own rebellion, God, that we insist on our own way, we insist on our own will. And I pray that we would put down that rebellion and submit to you, the true King. It's in his name I pray. Amen.